Hey everyone, I'm Chris Lesniak,
And I'm Rob Byer, and this is,
the Debate Math Podcast. Rob, I don't know about you, but the 5 day work week is exhausting. I dream of having more 3 day weekends.
well, if you haven't heard, some schools and even states are switching to 4-day work weeks. However, it is a debate among school districts whether or not we should switch to a 4-day school week.
It sounds great to me, but I know it may not work for everyone. So I think we need to learn more about this topic.
And that's why we have today's debate. Let's switch to a 4-day school week.
And let's get to it. So, here arguing for the switch to a 4 day school week, we have two awesome educators. First up is a math specialist and national board certified teacher with a doctorate in math ed who works as an instructional coach for K 5 math and literacy and a PD coordinator for math and science. She served as the president of the Ohio Council of Teachers of Mathematics, OCTM, a curriculum co designer, and an instructor for assessment and math methods courses at The Ohio State University. She's published in various journals and presented in multiple state and national conferences. She strives to lift the voices of all learners by providing experiences that will engage and empower them. It's Dr. Jody Bailey. Hi, Jody.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here with you.
So glad to have you here. Can you tell our listeners where you are and what your current role is?
Yes, I am in Ohio. I teach in Hilliard City Schools, which is just west of Columbus. And my current role is as a math specialist working with seventh and eighth graders in need of math intervention.
Awesome. Well, welcome. And then arguing along with her is a math coach and consultant who supports K 12 learners, teachers, administrators, and more across the country. A conference speaker, a Twitter loudmouth, an avid bookworm, and musical theater enthusiast. It's Shelby Strong. Hi, Shelby.
Hello, so good to be back.
Glad to have you on your third time with the podcast. Can you remind us where you are and what your current role is?
Absolutely. So I am currently in the New England area serving as a math coach and consultant. And when I am not here, I am bouncing around to the country speaking at conferences and generally having a good time talking about math.
Awesome. Love it. And now, for both of you, the question we ask all of our guests is, when did math first become controversial to you? And I'm going to start with you, Jody.
All right, I've been thinking about that question, and I don't know that controversial is quite the word I would use to describe it, but that there could be more than one way of thinking. So years ago, early on in my career, I was at a workshop that was being led by Lucy West, and she asked us to compare 7/8 and 8/9, but we were not allowed to calculate. And I panicked because the only strategy I knew was to find common denominators to compare them, or perhaps find the decimal equivalent and compare that. So I just stayed really quiet and hoped that no one would ask me which one I thought was larger because I genuinely had no idea. And I was fascinated by all the different strategies people had. Some people took grid paper and cut out 9 squares and folded it into eighths so they could slightly compare. And the strategy that really stuck with me was thinking about the missing piece and comparing the size of the missing piece, which um, so that was really intriguing to me that there could be so many different strategies.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And Shelby, I know you shared some before. Do you have a same or new story? When did math first become controversial to you?
So the last story that I shared was about when math became controversial to me as a person. So today I want to talk about when math became controversial to me as a teacher. And it was the year that a parent told me that it was inappropriate for me to ask eighth graders to think critically. This was the first time I'd heard anything like that in my career. And the argument was that in certain programs, you weren't asked to apply your learning until the last 2 years of that program, and the first couple of years were only spent on basically cramming as much information into your head as possible. And that was when it really struck me that not everyone shared the same beliefs about the purpose of math education and the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish here. So that was something that was really challenging for me was to having to rethink everything that I had done in my career up to that point and whether or not it needed some reconsideration. And thankfully, I landed on the side of no, every child deserves an opportunity to think critically, not just eighth graders, not just seniors, but even third graders and first graders and kindergartners, that every student should have that opportunity.
Thank you both.
And we have a team of two awesome educators arguing to stay with the 5-day school week model. First up is former elementary educator and math coach, co author of the new curricular resource, Let's Talk About Math, Engaging Students as Mathematical Thinkers, as well as the books Partnering with Parents in Elementary School Math and Adding Parents to the Equation. Also, this educator has never eaten cream cheese on a bagel. It's Dr. Hillary Kreisberg. Hi, Hillary.
Hi. I know I'm
Can you?
weird.
Hey, that's all right. Can you tell our listeners where you are and what your current role is?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in Massachusetts and I currently work for a large ed tech curriculum and assessment organization as the director of their tutoring division for the East Coast.
Awesome. And arguing along with her is an educator who has been an administrator, teacher, and coach with the Jefferson Morgan School District since 2009. He earned his master's degree from the California University of Pennsylvania, and he is currently working on his doctorate degree from Point Park University in leadership and administration. He's a sports enthusiast and is a member of the WPIL Football Steering Committee and is a lifelong Steelers fan as well as a Pitt football and basketball fan. He's such a sports fan. His oldest son's middle name is Braun, after LeBron James. It's Brandon Robinson. Hey, Brandon.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited for the opportunity.
Can you tell our listeners where you are and what your current role is?
Yeah, I'm in the Western Pennsylvania area. I'm currently the superintendent in my second year at the Jefferson Morgan School District, which is a small rural school district, very small, closer to Morgantown than it is Pittsburgh. But I've been there in many different capacities, like I said, since 2009.
Well, welcome to you both. Now, the question we ask all of our guests: when did math first become controversial to you? Hillary, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. I'm going to share the same thing that I shared the last time I was on the podcast, that it became controversial for me when I was in college and I was a math major. And as a female math major, I was maybe one of 3 women in the program. And it just became apparent to me as I looked around that this wasn't meant for everybody at the time. And it became even more controversial for me when I was on a group project in my history of math class, and I received an A- on the group project, but all of my male counterparts received an A, even though I was the one who really did the majority of the work. So that is when it became controversial for me.
Wow. And Brandon, for you, when did math first become controversial for you?
I've been thinking about this a lot. I really have two things: one as a student and one as a teacher. As a student in eighth grade, I had a math teacher who also taught my dad, and I remember being in the front of the room, overhead projector, getting sprayed with the spray, and really being taught only one way to think. There's only one way to get a right answer. Really didn't like math because of that experience. Fast forward to my teaching career, I'm teaching sixth grade science and social studies. My principal comes to me and says, "I'm moving you to sixth grade math." Big fear of mine, but I spent the summer preparing and ended up really loving it. And it's been something I've been passionate about, and it's really led me into leadership roles because I've learned a lot about curriculum writing and teaching students. There are more than one way to get the right answer, and there's many ways to think.
Yeah, and with that, let's get into the debate. We begin with opening statements from each of our speakers. You each have 2 minutes to present your arguments, and we're starting with the side arguing for switching to a 4-day week. And Jody, you're up first. Your time begins now.
All right. In 2020, the global pandemic disrupted our world. It became necessary to rethink our familiar ways of doing things. As we continue to rebuild from the global pandemic, we have an opportunity to reimagine education and how we serve students, families, and the broader community. Our claim is that schools should consider a 4-day week. Concerns about student achievement and opportunity gaps in access to education have been documented for decades. Adopting a 4-day school week provides opportunity to address these concerns, and we have 3 warrants for this. 1, schools are part of an ecosystem within a community. Providing a more flexible model for schooling extends support for needs that are not currently met. A common concern in thinking about a 4-day school week is lack of childcare for younger students. Providers of childcare will likely adopt new business models to meet the needs of their clientele. Our second warrant is 1 day each week that is focused less on academic lessons would provide students with an opportunity to explore their own interests. A 4-day week aligns with Google's 20% rule, where employees are encouraged to spend 20% of their work hours on projects not necessarily related to their specific job responsibilities, but what they think will most benefit Google. While some analysts have noted that this can lead to micromanagement, the practice has led to the development of some of Google's most innovative services. Our third warrant is time. Time is a limited resource. Considering different ways to structure our instructional time allows us to find a schedule that best supports the needs of our learners. This might be through extending the school day to create a longer day for each day of the 4-day school week with a 3-day weekend, or an alternative where the 5th day of the school week is used for teachers to engage in professional activities. There will not be a one-size-fits-all solution because the needs and resources within each community are unique.
Thank you. And now we will hear from the side arguing to keep the 5-day week. We're going to start with Hillary. Hillary, you have 2 minutes, and your time begins now.
Okay. We are here today to discuss whether or not a school week should be reduced down to 4 days. I firmly stand with the 5-day-a-week side, as the current educational system as a whole is just not equipped nor ready to handle the impacts of a 4-day work week. While the arguments for a 4-day work week often mention recruiting and retaining teachers, saving money, and increasing student attendance, more than not, the justifications for siding with a 4-day school week have little to do with the student academic achievement. And I don't know about you, but I'm here for the students. So first and foremost, the 5-day school week provides consistency and structure essential for effective learning. Consistent daily routines allow students to develop discipline, time management skills, and a sense of responsibility. This regularity fosters an environment where students can thrive academically as they know what to expect each day and can better prepare themselves for learning. Conversely, condensing the school week into 4 days risks disrupting this crucial rhythm, potentially leading to a decrease in student engagement and academic performance. And I think we can all agree that a 4-day week is too challenging to implement well in the current climate and in the way that best meets student needs. As it is already, students are in school for 6 long hours. Lengthening a school day will not increase learning. I haven't met one elementary educator who hasn't complained about teaching math after lunch due to student exhaustion and inability to focus. So I can't even imagine around 4 o'clock what that would look like. Not to mention, according to the NWEA, most studies have found small to medium negative impacts on achievement on average. These negative effects are roughly equivalent to a student being 2 to 7 weeks behind where they would have been if they had stayed on a 5-day week. Furthermore, the 5-day work week supports working families and promotes socioeconomic equity. Many families rely on the structure of a 5-day school week to coordinate their work schedules and arrange childcare, and shortening that would deviate from that and create further inequities among students.
Thank you. And now we'll hear again from the side promoting the 4-day week with Shelby. Shelby, you have 2 minutes and your time begins now.
Changes to the status quo are rarely met with open arms and cheers. However, the roots of the current 5-day class week with some resolve for agricultural reasons are a myth. School year as it currently exists was made in response to the needs of the communities they served, including schools canceling their summer sessions due to low daily attendance from overheated buildings and family summer vacations. Times have changed, and it's time for schools to change as well. Current 5-day week already does not work for many families, particularly those in which caregivers work non-standard hours. In current studies of schools that have transitioned to a 4-day school week, staff have responded that the calendar change has improved staff morale, that the 4-day work week had a positive impact on what is taught in classrooms and it had increased academic quality, and that there were less instances of bullying and fighting among students. This change cannot take place on its own. It must exist within a community of care where we take collective responsibility, not just for the academic well being of students, but for the social and emotional well being of students and teachers. If we're being honest, the teaching profession is not very attractive right now. The demands on teachers' time are not new, but social media has made this more readily available to those who are not in the know. Why would anyone want to go to college and become a part of this profession that we can all agree is overworked and underpaid? The 4 day schedule allows teachers to have time on that fifth day to take care of administrative tasks that pile up during the week, to hold collaborative team learning time, and for students to pursue interests that don't necessarily fit into the current 5 day schedule.
Thank you. And finally, arguing again for a 5-day week, we have Brandon. Brandon, you have 2 minutes, and your time begins now.
Let me be clear from the beginning that innovation is important to me, but I firmly believe in a 5-day school week, and I believe it's critical that we uphold that tradition. While the allure of a short week and the new fad of a short week may be out there, we must not overlook the profound implications of such a large shift. First and foremost, the 5-day school week is not merely about filling time, it's about maximizing opportunities for learning and growth. Each day in the classroom matters, providing invaluable time and resources. By condensing the week into 4 days, we risk diluting the quality of education and the services for children. We know it's not just about academics. Let's consider the broader impacts about the 5-day school week. For many students, school serves more than just academics. It's a place of learning, a safe place, and a place of stability, and a hub for services. Another pressing issue is, like it was mentioned before, is finding childcare in many different areas. More so than ever, parents are both working and in need of childcare when school is closed. Additionally, from a high school perspective, the extracurricular activities would need to shift due to moving to a 4-day week, which could cause a lot of issues with transportation and equal rights to everyone for sports and activities. Moreover, let's not forget the lessons that we learned during the pandemic that of how important school is, not just for academics, but for the social aspect and being able to see mental health services, their social interactions, and their academic well-being. As we chart the course forward, as someone who pushes for school innovation, we must prioritize strategies that strengthen our schools, recruit teachers, and provide a place for students to thrive. In the end, it's not just about a number of days in a week. It's about a quality of education, the well-being of our students, and importantly, our schools and our community.
Thank you all. Wow, you've given us some really good food for thought. All four of you came out strong with lots of good things. I want to start Jody and Shelby because the other team brought up like extended days and all these things. So I'm just curious, in your 4-day week mind, like, are the days longer? Do you have to give up summer vacation? Like, how do you fit in the learning? Like, what is your 4-day week model that you're kind of picturing?
So I can kick off with this. In my mind, I'm envisioning a longer school year with a 4 day work week. And the fifth day, the schools are still open. And that could mean that paraprofessionals and high school students are providing childcare and looking after students. We already see that high school students are capable of looking after younger students because many high schoolers are camp counselors in the summer. So they are more than capable of providing care and looking after students. I also think that a lot of times we talk about the summer brain drain. We talk about the fact that an extended summer vacation leads to a lot of loss in learning, in that a lot of the beginning of the school year is spent having to recover from so much time out of school. So, to Hillary's point in her opening statement about routines, an extended school year with a 4 day week would help preserve some of those routines.
And Jody, are you having a similar model or other things in your mind?
Yes, I think I'm aligned with Shelby in thinking about extending the school year. Um, I think something to consider is if you're doing 4 days a week, are you expecting teachers to work that fifth day? Are they going to also be working through the summer? Just from a financial perspective, I can't imagine teachers are going to be willing to work more hours for the same amount of pay. So you'd have to think carefully about how you structure that time. but I think there would be a lot of benefits to changing the school calendar alongside with the number of days in a school week.
What's stopping us from extending the school year now? Because that's a different debate. I didn't come here for that debate. I would extend the school year right now and make more learning. I'm for it. I love the routine.
You do summer 5-day week then, Hillary? Is that what you're saying?
I still would do 5 days a week and I would go through the summer. I think the structure and the routine is totally important. Absolutely. And I think you talked about making teaching more attractive. Well, the most attractive component of teaching to teachers is the summer. So I think you just went against yourself.
I would disagree with that. And summers were not the thing that were most attractive to me when I was in the classroom. I mean, they're certainly nice, but if you think of when you talk to teachers, they're looking forward to summer because they're exhausted, because there are so many demands on their time during the week that they're paid only for the hours that they spend in front of children, maybe a lunch, maybe a planning if they're lucky, if that's not being covered by being asked to go and cover for someone's class or being asked to go and do some other duties. And so by creating a fifth day where they can handle some of those tasks, where they can schedule emails and phone calls, where they can take part in PLCs, you're creating a much more attractive environment where they're not desperately looking forward to summer because they're just so exhausted by April and May.
You know, I guess the add on that, why wouldn't we create within our 5-day weeks more time for teachers to do those things? More time at the end of the day for planning, more time for professional development within those 5 days. You know, we have kids about 6 hours. Instead of us keeping them in faculty meetings all the time, why don't we design our days to work better for our staff? And I think we talked a lot of the time, 4-day work week, we talk about retention of teachers. But if you don't pay the teachers, I don't care what work week you go through, because I don't see a world where a teacher makes X amount of dollars and takes a huge pay cut to come to a 4-day work week. I think we need to pay the teachers what they deserve. And I think we need to take our days and we need to look at how we can support teachers better for PLCs, for professional development, and for time for them to lesson plan. I do fear that moving to a 4-day work week, we still will have the same absenteeism. So now, how many times are we in a 3-day work week in a certain subject area? Because teachers do need breaks, and it's nice when they're built in within those 5 days.
So I love that you're all celebrating teachers and you all want the best for teachers. Like, yes, teachers are overworked and it is sometimes being like stretched way too thin. But I want to, Hillary and Brandon, my question to you all, because you both kind of brought up like some structure is important, the routine is important. And I wonder, like, are we just catering towards that like industrial model of just like getting kids ready to be, complacent employees who just like put their head down and work fight? Like I've worked in some high end private schools in Los Angeles, and there's a lot more like free time in the day, like because they're trying to encourage entrepreneurship kind of thing. And I'm just wondering, are you quashing that if you like really push this like 5-day week routine?
I think that once again, you need to look at that time in your day and build in those personalized learning time, is what we called it in my school. Where kids have an hour of time to do some personal learning. I think that needs built in for students. And I think when we talk about the factory model, I think a lot of people coming out of the pandemic thought the new world was going to be 4 days. People were working hybrid, while a lot of people that I've talked to are going back into the office, back into the 5-day work week. So we're trying to prepare kids for their next step. We thought that before the pandemic, it was going to move that way, but I think the pandemic opened our eyes to a lot.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about like any of that. It's just the routine of being somewhere, of having a safe haven, of having a meal to eat, of socializing. So I think the 5-day a week piece for that is what's critically important. I think the time on learning is really important. And I think a long day, I think about my current work days right now. And, I start at 9 and by 3 o'clock, I am drained. And what I produce from 3 to 5 is not the same as what I produce from 9 to 3. And I think that that's really telling of how I would be as a student later in the day. Even if I got that extra day, I had a 3-day weekend this weekend. And even having that extra day off, I was excited and had a great time. But when I came back, I knew I had to be on, and it was just too much pressure.
But I wonder how much
So
of
I,
that pressure is because a 3-day weekend is a rare option and not the norm. Would we adjust to a new norm if 4-day weeks were our regular habit? Is it that 5-day weeks are your habit and therefore that bonus day throws off the rest of your week?
I want to go I want to go back to this the social emotional side of this because both sides have talked about the mental health benefits. I think in Shelby's opening she talked about that studies have shown less fighting and bullying in a 4-day week. But then Hillary just talked about having a safe place, a safe haven, being able to have a lunch and a place to go and structure. So I'm wondering, I'm actually going to start with Jody on this side of it. In terms of like the social emotional side of it, like what are our benefits to a 4-day week and how is it different from the 5-day week? Because I'm kind of hearing that both have benefits, but if they both have benefits, it doesn't really get us, one side or the other. So Jody, I want to bring you into this on the social emotional side of it.
I think again, it's the idea of restructuring time to benefit the members of a community. So I don't think there is a one size fits all. Um, I can speak for my area. Um, we have a lot of partnerships with other organizations. So, for example, during the summer, there is actually a program that students can go each day from about 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. Lunch is provided. They interact with other students, other children who are there. It's run by high schoolers. So it provides some of that routine. So that could be a model that's provided for that fifth day for students who do need it. Um, I also have a lot of students who play travel sports, club sports, and they are already taking the long weekends. So this would support those families as well. So I think just providing a little more flexibility for everyone. Um, I'll say even for myself as a mom, I have two boys. They played travel hockey, and I get 3 personal days a year as a teacher. And the tournaments were always they were at least a 3 hour, often a 5 hour drive. So trying to juggle and be able to be there as a mom while also juggling my job as a teacher provided some angst for me over the years. We made it work, but just thinking about the needs of different family structures, I think it's a conversation about what would work best for a community. And so it should be an option on the table.
And I want to go to the other side, and Brandon, I want to loop you in on this, because I think when we talk about mental health here, I think we're talking about a few different groups of people with mental health. We're talking about students, and I think that's where like Shelby was talking about less bullying and less fighting. I think we're talking about mental health for teachers, and you're talking about extending actual built-in time for teachers. And then Jody just talked about families as well. So in terms of like the 4-day, 5-day work week for schools, um, how are we able to get more mental health for all three those groups? Is that even possible, or is this going to be an ongoing debate with the 4 and 5-day week?
I think it's an ongoing debate. I think Jody brings up a point. It depends on your community. I mean, I have a rural, very rural community that I work in. That if a bus does not pick up our kids, a lot of times that those things don't happen. If we don't have a hub of our school open, a lot of those things don't happen for teachers, students, community members. And it just depends on the model of the 4-day week. There's some that shut the school completely down on a Friday. My school's used for everything. We don't have a community center or anything like that. So when it comes to student mental health, which I think we all are a big focus on student mental health and student well-being, it's hard for them to check in, without being there. And we found out during the pandemic, like many of our families don't have internet. So to say, let's have a Zoom session, if your mental health bad, one, they might not have those capabilities. Two, if they're off, they're going to be off. Kids are going to be off that day. They're going to sleep in. So my fear, one of them too, is just that checking in basis. A lot of our kids, even in the summer, we have to have programs to kind of check in on our kids to make sure they're okay. just because of the way our community works with our school. We're a very community-based school, being in a rural area.
I'm gonna stay with you, Hillary and Brendan. My question is really about like, do the different ages and grade level matter? Because I'm hearing like different ideas for different ages of students. So like, do you see a difference of like, could high schools be more easily a 4-day week than elementary? And would you compromise on that? Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I would compromise on that. I do think elementary is a completely different beast than I would say middle and high school, for sure. And I think that as a high schooler, you're trying to learn how to enter a workforce. You're trying to learn accountability, all of those things. So I do see benefits to a 4-day week for that purpose. But at the elementary level, I'm just fundamentally against it as the current educational landscape exists. I mean, you see how hard it is to adopt a curriculum correctly. I can't even imagine trying to get people to take curriculum that's right now for 5 days a week and try to make it into 4. Like, it seems impossible at this moment because of all of the external factors that exist.
If I could add to that from the high school perspective of being a former high school principal, we're talking about kids that really need their mental health, and not to keep beating that drum, but also you have a lot of kids that are in vocational programs that need hours. And I know in our area it's AM or PM vocational hours, and I think that comes into play too, a lot. And we're all about career-based learning right now, and just getting those hours in. And I do have a fear also from the career vocational school perspective of going to a 4-day week. How does that affect their overall hours? Because if you're in cosmetology, for example, there's certain set hours in Pennsylvania you have to hit to be able to get your certification. So how does that play in from the high school perspective as well? And I think they kind of go hand in hand, especially in my area. If elementary stays home and high school comes in, I'm gonna have high school kids have to take care of their elementary siblings. It just I grew up in a house where I would have to take care of my elementary siblings. So I just feel like it once again depends on your community. I 100% agree with that, but I feel like it has to be either one or all.
Yeah, and just quickly, Jody and Shelby, do you agree? Does it matter what grade level? Or are you
I
working on it
do
for
I
all?
do think that Brandon's point about it depends on your community is a really important point, because I think that we've gotten away in some instances from this idea as schools as the center of a community of care. And that's something that would really be necessary for a model like this to work. So I think about my own mother. So Hillary mentioned that a 4-day week might not work for parents who work traditional 9 to 5s. Very few of the schools that I taught in had parents that taught traditional 9 to 5s. I taught in a place where we had a lot of shift workers, folks working graveyard shifts, folks who were like my own mother, who was a nurse and worked a lot of 12-hour shifts. So her days off weren't on the weekends, they were on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So she had to rely on her community to get me to school in the structure that currently exists. And that is something that I think is sorely missing right now. And I really wish that we could return to is this idea of less individualism and more caring for one another and truly having a community be a community. And I think that's something that would benefit all students and all parents and all families, is not just having, well, Saturdays and Sundays, that's it, wipe your hands, we're done. My own son, I have to be sure that I can get him to school and pick him up, because his school doesn't provide before care or after care. And if you're working a traditional 9 to 5, you're relying on one of those things in order to get your child in the first place. So the current model isn't working for a lot of families.
But what you just said, I mean, I don't see a model that would work for like a 12-hour shift or a graveyard shift. Like,
Right, and so if my family was already having to rely on community to take care in the system that exists already, the system that is supposedly best for everyone, then why couldn't we reimagine what a 4-day week would look like and better serve more families, not just the ones who hold traditional jobs?
Yeah, and Jody, being from the elementary world, do you see it could still work then for elementary, even though the other side's arguing against that?
Um, I I think again it would take a lot of conversations and a lot of planning. High school is a little easier to experiment with because they typically are old enough at least to be home on their own. You couldn't expect that of a first grader. But I know that like the wraparound care latchkey is it can be very difficult to get into in some of our schools. So that does leave parents scrambling. And the hours are 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. So that doesn't work for a lot of parents who even are working traditional jobs. So there were days that my husband and I found that schedule challenging and would have to kind of rely on other people to pick up our kids. So I agree with Shelby about the community of care and just thinking creatively about how we can continue to better support families.
Let me move on now to talking about financial benefits here. I mean, anything that's changes in schools, it's always about like what's the cost, can we afford it? So Jody and Shelby, do you see this saving schools money, or what financial benefits do you see?
I don't see it saving dollars. I think it's a restructuring of resources.
I would agree with that. I think that I know that I've seen studies where in rural communities they did move to a 4-day week for cost saving. So that way they didn't have to have the buses and they didn't have to run the air conditioner or the heater or things like that. And that to me is not a sufficient argument. That I think that that is, sort of a last ditch desperate effort. And if that's working for those communities, that's wonderful. But I think that just making any change in education because money is never the right call.
Good. We all agree. We can go home now.
Yeah, that's I was working
Makes
on that
sense.
argument, but hey, I think you have to remember too, anytime you look at saving money first, it's a problem. I think we all agree, like it comes down to kids first. But I think you may originally see a financial gain from a 4-day week, but everybody's going to catch up, right? So if your bus contract, you save money because you go to a 4-day week, and it's by the time it's up, they're going to recoup their costs. And I know for a fact in the summer, we try to go to 410s because we are going to turn the AC off. We're going to shut the building down. We're going to do this. And what happened was phone would ring. Hey, I need in the gym for basketball, open gym. Hey, I need it. And it just became an issue where it was like, what are we really saving? A couple $100? It's not worth it when, once again, we've all said this, it's all about the community. So I agree with you. I don't think there's any long-term financial gains.
And I'm from Louisiana where you cannot cut the AC off even if the building is empty because you're going to show back up in August and that building's going to be full of mildew. So you've got a new expense that you've got to take care of now.
I like
All
how
right,
she tried to lay on the Southern accent there, even though she's in the northern states now.
Listen, I fly under the radar. I'm very incognito until I say y'all, and then all bets are off.
She said New Orleans and she just went off.
All right. So the final question from me, and the final question for before we get into closing arguments, what is the primary goal of our educational system, and which schedule, 4-day or 5-day, best aligns with achieving that goal? I'm actually going to start first with Shelby, and then I want to give everybody an opportunity. So we'll go Shelby, Jody, Brandon, Hillary. That's how it's shown on my screen. So again, what is the primary goal of our educational system, and which schedule, the 4 or 5-day, best aligns with achieving that goal?
Well, thanks for, the softball question there, Rob.
Yeah.
Ooh. I'm actually really glad that you asked that because one thing that I've been hearing since I was in school to become a teacher were arguments that teachers weren't babysitters. And so I'm sure we've all seen the memes about, if you paid me like a babysitter and here's how much money I'd make a year and things like that. And that's part of where I cringe a little bit at the childcare arguments for why we need to have a 5-day week because parents need somewhere to send their kids. That bothers me because that's not really the point of schools. Like, yes, we do happen to look after your kids while you're with us. That's the goal. The goal is education. The goal is learning. The goal is creating citizens that we want to live amongst, citizens who are going to be the people who we work with, the people who vote, the people who take care of us as we get old and decrepit. The folks that we're relying on, we have to take care of them now so that they take care of us later. And if you look at some of the analysis of educational, gains and loss and things like that, overall, you don't see a statistical significant difference in the learning between students who attend a 5-day week and students who attend a 4-day week. And so, if our goal is academic learning, if our goal is creating an informed populace, folks who are active, caring members of the community, then why wouldn't we want to encourage folks to carve out time to take care of themselves, to pursue their interests, to be individual, unique humans? Because right now, our current system doesn't do a whole lot of supporting them.
Jody?
So I think the goal of education or schools is to support students as they mature and become productive citizens. But I think we need to remember that the students are part of an ecosystem. And so thinking about how could we restructure that ecosystem so that maybe teachers can focus on the teaching and the academics, and we can partner with community organizations to support things like mental health and others to support students' interests. And can we restructure the time so that teachers can focus on their original job? I feel like over my years as a teacher, I've taken on a lot of additional roles that were not part of my original teacher training.
And Brandon?
I mean, I think our goal is kids. It's all about kids, and it's all about providing academics, but social and emotional learning as well, and also providing them with what they need no matter where they come from. That includes a meal, that includes talking to a teacher that's their favorite teacher. I think we need to refocus on how we use the hours within the 5-day school week. I think we're too stagnant in the you sit in a row, I teach. And I think we need to refocus on what students need. And that's our goal within the 5-day week. My biggest fear is that going longer doesn't mean better. I mean, how many teachers can really teach bell to bell and do a great job with longer classes and get the same results? So I think academically, socially, emotionally, and my job is to advocate for kids that are often forgotten in rural areas. And that's a big factor, is being there for our kids in every way. And that doesn't mean going, I heard you, Jody, about teachers taking on many other roles. We all have had to do that. But number one, we should just be there for kids overall,
Mhm.
no matter where they come from.
And I absolutely 100% agree with that.
I also agree with Brandon. He's my partner.
Well, and Hillary, you get the chance to answer the question too, so go ahead.
Well, I think everyone has said the same thing, which is that school is about learning. And I think you've said a lot more than that, but ultimately it comes down to school is a place of learning. And where are you going to do more learning, in 4 days or in 5? And I think you're going to do more learning across more time. And going back to something Shelby had said, while overall academic achievement may not be significantly affected by a 4-day school week based on what the studies have shown so far, studies have shown subject-specific effects. So there has been some research that has found that math scores tend to actually decrease more noticeably than reading scores as a result of a shorter work week or shorter school week. So since we're here for a math debate podcast, I would say a 5-day week is the way to go.
Just want to counter that real quick. You and I must be looking at different studies, which definitely happens. We know that studies can only capture who's in front of them. And so, depending on where you are, you're going to get different results. But some of the studies that I've looked at showed actually a slight increase in mathematics, and actually the dip was in ELA. Additionally, Brandon mentioned that primarily our purpose is to show up for kids and to care for kids. And I agree with that. And that's significantly harder to do when the adults aren't taken care of.
Oh, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, don't let her get that last word.
No, I got to keep talking now. So
I agree.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. But once again, we need to pay teachers what they deserve, and we need to treat them like professionals And we need to take that week, those days, I don't care how many hours, 10, 8, 6, 4, and give our teachers time to do the best job they can. And I know none of us here can solve the pay, but we all can have a little bit of say, hopefully, within your school of giving your teachers more time. But I think we want teachers to be treated the right way because we all got into these jobs for kids and they need to be treated the right way. I don't think whether it's 4 days or 5 days, I think we all can agree teachers need to be treated the right way.
And on that note, I'm going to end our questioning round. We will now end by giving each side 2 minutes to make their final arguments to you.
And up first is Shelby. Shelby, go ahead. Floor is yours.
So I think over the course of this episode, we've all argued for the same idea that the current system isn't working for everyone. We also agree that our primary purpose is in serving the community. We just have different ideas on how to accomplish this, and that's okay. We continue to believe that a 4 day school week provides opportunities to meet the needs for both teachers and students that might not be met in a 5 day model. While we've heard many arguments tonight about the argument against an extended school day, neither Jody nor I have advocated for this model because there is no single way to meet the needs of a community without input from said community. The pandemic revealed to the country something that educators have known for a long time. The current system is not best meeting the needs of anyone. And considering a 4 day week is just one possible first step to reimagining what schools could and should be.
Thank you. And with the final word, we have Brandon. Brandon, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think we all have some of the same focus, which is kids in the end. And there's two pieces to this puzzle. There's kids and there's teachers. And I'll start with teachers and a 5 day work week. I think majority of the time, the benefit of a 4 day work week is for the teachers for the reasons of time, resources, recruitment. Those things could all be solved by taking care of your teachers and making sure within the 5 day structure that they have time to plan. They have time to work together. They have time for PLCs. And then it's also our job to advocate for our teachers to receive pay for the hard work that they do. But moving on to the most important piece, the students, I feel that they learn best in a 5 day environment. Curriculums are built for a 5 day environment, and that's most important for kids to learn. But also, schools provide much more, as we found out during the pandemic. They provide nutrition. Many students receive a free breakfast and free lunch that's needed daily. It also provides social and emotional help, whether that's checking in with a teacher, a mental health counselor, a social worker. That's needed every day possible. And also, an important part of school is the extracurricular activities. And if you have a community that needs transportation, it's going to be extremely important that on that 5th day, they're able to show up to be part of those extracurricular activities. And socialization is also important during that time. But as we mentioned, everything is about what's best for your community. We just feel that students learn best within a 5 day school week, and that we have to provide structure for teachers to be successful during those 5 day school weeks. Thank you.
Thank you all. And that concludes this debate. Well done. You've given us great insights. Honestly, I was just saying to Rob, I have learned from both sides so much. I'm interested in this topic, but I didn't know so many details. And I hope you've given some good food for thought for teachers and other educators out there who are listening.
And now it's up to our listeners to take a moment, ponder the arguments, and share with friends and consider what's resonated with you. Be sure to go to our Twitter or X at Debate Math Pod to share your thoughts on this debate. Which one do you want? 4 day school week or a 5 day school week?
And huge thanks to all four of our guests. You were so thoughtful, respectful. You found many places of agreement. You spoke from the heart. I think you all showed us how we can disagree on a topic, but still get along and have a great, productive conversation. Thank you all.
And also thanks to those of you who are listening. We hope you enjoyed and learned from this.
And as we wrap up, Jody, where can listeners find you?
Listeners can find me on Twitter at Bailey Jody or on LinkedIn.
And Shelby?
Listeners can find me on Twitter at Snuffleupagus, like Snuffleupagus, but with an E. You can also see me this summer at the Joint Elementary Conference in New Orleans and at the NCTM Conference in Chicago in September.
And Brandon, where can listeners find you?
You can find me on Twitter or X at Mr. Rob 7234 or on LinkedIn.
And Hillary, where can listeners find you?
You can find me on Twitter. I think my handle is at Dr._Kreisberg, but I can't even remember. So just follow Shelby and you'll find me. And I'm also on LinkedIn.
I guess I'm also on LinkedIn, but don't expect to find me there because I don't post. But it exists.
Thank you all.